The damage you'll unleash with this Void Titan build will absolutely blow your mind. Get ready to watch your Trace Rifle shred through bosses and champions with insane power like never before. This build takes advantage of seasonal artifacts, Void Overshields, and Devourer to ensure non-stop carnage while keeping you alive even in the toughest encounters. If you guys would like to copy the build for yourself, the dim loadout link will be in the description. To start the build, I would like to show you guys what exotic armor piece I decided to put to make this build even powerful. The exotic helmet is called Helm of Saint 14. This helmet will grant you the ability to give yourself a 25% weapon damage boost whenever you pass through your Ward of Dawn for 15 seconds. If you were to exit out of your Ward of Dawn, you will keep your overshield. Also too, enemies that were to enter your bubble, which is Ward of Dawn, they will become blinded. So this exotic helmet will give us a 25% increase in weapon damage, and to stack that even further, I went with this exotic trace rifle called a Microcosm. The weapon perk for this trace rifle is called Paracausal Imbuement. Whenever you get kills with this weapon, it will grant you super energy. This weapon gains bonus damage once your super expires. So for the bubble, it is a one-time use super, so all you would have to do is activate it once, and this perk will be activated. This buff will last up to 20 seconds, and it would give you a 20% increase in damage to this trace rifle. Also too, this is a kinetic trace rifle, and this thing shreds enemies that have shields. So that could be like a solar shield, a strand shield, a void shield, etc. Any shield, it would obliterate. So now we have 45% increase in damage if we were to tie to our exotic helmet and with this trace rifle. To stack this even further on the seasonal artifacts, you need to go for harsh refraction. Trace rifles do more damage to targets afflicted by elemental debuffs matching their element type. So you're probably asking like, super, Microcosm is a kinetic trace rifle. How does this even work? Well, let me show you. So Microcosm is the only kinetic heavy weapon in the game. So Microcosm deals 20% increase in damage to enemies that are affected by any elemental debuff. So that could be arc, solar, void, stasis, and strand. So any of those debuffs, you will get an extra 20% increase in damage. As long as you're hitting the target that has that elemental debuff. And what's also cool is that your teammates can also inflict those elemental debuffs. And basically, no matter what you're doing, you're going to be activating this buff. Also too, your legendary trace rifles will deal 50% increase in damage. So in this build, we are using this void trace rifle, which is called the Chronophage, because of two things. The first one are the perks. I ran Repulsor's Brace and Destabilizing Rounds. Repulsor's Brace just gives you an overshield whenever you defeat void debuff targets, such as Suppressed, Volatile, or Weaken. On the fourth column, which is Destabilizing Rounds, defeating a target creates a void burst. If you were to hit other targets with this burst, it would make them volatile, and it would also grant you volatile rounds for a short time. For the weapon mod for the Chronophage, you could either go for backup mag to increase your magazine size, or you can go for heavy ammo finder enhancement just to give you a higher of a chance to give you heavy ammo for your Microcosm. And the second part is in the seasonal artifacts on the last column, called Elemental Supercharger. Defeating exhausted or severed targets with weapons that match your super element grants super energy. So in the artifacts on the first column, we have Overload Trace Rifles. So all we would have to do is exhaust that enemy and we will get super energy back even more. So if you want to exhaust the enemy, it usually occurs when you were to hit a yellow bar or higher. You know when you exhausted that enemy, when that enemy has that red outline to it. And once you kill him with this Void Trace Rifle, you'll get a boatload of super energy back. And to give us even more super energy, on one of our fragments, I went with Echo of Reprisal. Final blows when surrounded by combatants will grant you super energy. So whenever you're surrounded by 3 or more enemies within 8 meters, this fragment will activate. In this build, we are using Ward of Dawn. So for the aspects you're going to want to go for is Offensive Bulwark. While you have an overshield or are inside a Ward of Dawn, your grenade charges significantly faster. You have increased melee range and damage, and melee final blows restore a small portion of your overshield and extends its duration. The next aspect is a bit more of an overkill when it comes to producing your overshield. You can change this one if you like, but I decided to go for Bastion. When casting your barricade, it will grant an overshield to yourself and nearby allies and empowers it, enabling it to slowly regenerate the overshield of allies bunkering behind it and extends their overshield duration. The next two fragments are for survivability. The first one is Echo of Starvation. When picking up a Void Breach or an Orb of Power, it will grant you Devour. Whenever you get Devour, it would restore your HP, and it would also grant you Grenade Energy. Also too, if you were to pick up a Void Breach, it will grant you Class Ability Energy. But sadly, you'll get minus 10 recovery. The second fragment increases the duration for Overshield, Devour, and Invisibility, and it's called Echo of Persistence. But sadly, you'll get minus 10 resilience. So the only buffs we're going to be applied for this build are Overshield and Devour. The last fragment I went with is Echo of Undermining, just to give us another way to apply that elemental debuff for our Trace Rifle, and it's called Echo of Undermining. Your Void Grenades weaken targets, but sadly, you'll get minus 20 Discipline. For your primary weapon, I went with the Strand Sidearm. I tied this one to the seasonal artifacts just to give us an additional way to give us that elemental debuff. So for this sidearm, you're going to be inflicting unraveling rounds and also threadlings. But in most cases, unraveling rounds, because of this artifact called Unraveling Orbs, when picking up an Orb of Power or a Tangle, it will grant strand weapons unraveling rounds. The perks that I used for this sidearm, on the third column I used Thresh. Killing combatants with this weapon generates a small amount of super energy, so every time you get a kill, it would give you 1% super energy. And on the fourth column, I went with Frenzy. Being in combat for an extended time increases damage, handling, and reload speed for this weapon until you are out of combat. So all you would have to be is in combat for at least 12 seconds to give you all of those buffs, but mainly it'll give you 100 reloads, so you just reload very quickly. Let's talk about which stats you should be focusing on. Your main priority for this build is Intellect, just to decrease your super. If you have 100 Intellect, your Ward of Dawn cooldown will go all the way down to 5 minutes and 48 seconds. And your second priority would be Resilience. That would give you a 30% damage reduction if you have 100 Resilience. A final way to grant your Microcosm increased damage even further is on your leg armor piece called Kinetic Weapon Surge. Basically, just pick up an Orb of Power and it would increase your kinetic weapon damage. I am running 2 copies of this, so it's going to give me a 17% increase in damage. So in total, we are going to be getting a 82% increase in damage if you were to activate all of those buffs, and I'm going to show you guys how you can be able to do that. All right, here's what you need to do. You're first going to want to get your Ward of Dawn ready. Once it is, try to produce tons of Orbs of Power to give yourself a bunch of armor charges to give yourself your kinetic weapon surge. Once that's ready, activate Ward of Dawn and then use your strand weapon, it could be any strand weapon you like, to inflict those unraveling rounds to that single target, or you can use your grenade to weaken the target. Any of the two would work. And once you do, swap to your Microcosm and rain hell, rinse and repeat. If you guys are looking for a build that is kind of like this, that prioritizes and trace rifles, I do have a prismatic warlock build for you. If you guys would like to check it out, it will be on the top right of the screen, and that build will prioritize in you giving yourself unlimited special ammo and also unlimited heavy ammo for your teammates, ensuring that you would have infinite ammo at all times. I got a question for you. Which trace rifle is your favorite? It could be an exotic, it could be a legendary, it could be a rare or blue. Which trace rifle is your favorite? Let me know in the comments.